All right, let's see. Is this thing working? All right. Let's see. Welcome to the Conference Interpreters Podcast. And I'm one of your hosts, Alain Breton, and I'm joining today is my partner in crime, the one and only Brian Bickford, right here.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to do this. This is our first time doing a podcast, so we hope you can bear with us. But we've got a great topic for you today, so grab onto your headsets and let's go. We're going to dive into the world of remote versus on-site interpretation.
Yes, indeed. That's right. So picture this. This is the world back in 2019. We're wearing very nice suits. We're going to events left and right. Wearing little boots, larger boots, two interpreters, three interpreters. We're sipping coffee. We're having bad lunch. And then, boom, 2020. What happens? Well, everybody knows. We are at home waiting for things to happen. Suddenly, we lose all of our contracts, so we gotta do something about it. So, Brian, you've been the owner of an agency for quite a while. So, what did you do when COVID hit?
Interesting question, because I actually was in between two companies at the time. I had just finished um, being CEO of Pendleton Translations, and then I was moving on to a new company called UN Language Services, which I still own today. So I was busy during COVID setting up the company, and it was great at first in 2019 when I was setting everything up. I was very excited, high hopes and everything, and then all of a sudden in February 2020, that 1 week in February 2020, I lost contracts for the entire year. So yeah, that was my experience at the
So,
beginning of COVID.
so what did people actually write you or call you, or did you
Uh,
contact them, or everybody like nobody really knew what was going on?
I think it was a combination of things because actually what happened was I had all my contracts lined up and everything for 2020, and then I received an email, okay, it's canceled, and then as things slowly moved into March, it was like, okay, just email after email. A lot of panic, I think, in all the emails too. Like there,
From
because
interpreters as well?
yeah, and I mean for the everybody, like event planners and AV companies, like everyone's like, oh my God, we're shutting down. Like we can't do anything. There's no more money to be made. There's no more people to meet in person. And that was our reality. That was our bread and butter. We were at conferences, like you said, in our nice suits and trying to, blend into the background as interpreters as we should be doing. But yeah, it was such a wake-up call that, oh my God, here we are in February 2020. In March, everything officially shut down, and we have to basically reimagine our profession, or that's it, we're done.
Well, before, so then suddenly, I mean, how long did it take for, let's say, Zoom, which is the most popular platform, to actually get its act together and start offering interpretation, the interpretation feature? Or did they already have the interpretation feature and nobody was using it? So how did it come about? Do you know?
I'm not sure when Zoom started putting the interpretation feature because that was really like the first platform that we all became aware of that offered interpretation right in the platform. Teams didn't have it. I don't think WebEx had it yet. I could be wrong,
Yeah,
but
WebEx was the phone thing, right? Like
we,
the
we have
phone.
fact checkers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everybody who's watching this, we get a bunch of insults by email for everything wrong that we're saying right now.
the CEO of WebEx is going to come after us. Oh no.
Don't sue
So
us.
don't sue us. So no, we yes, Zoom was the platform of preference for most events that went online, and I'd say it took at least 6 months because I found myself twiddling my thumbs for a lot of the beginning of 2020 when everything kind of closed down, and I was like, what am I going to do with this time? Like while everything kind of reopens, nobody had any idea. And if it was going to reopen, are we going to like go back to meeting people in person and having conferences in person? So no one was really sure. So I think everything was kind of in limbo for a while. And
Did you
then
did you ever think about doing something else out of your life, like just to pay the bills?
Yeah, it's like this is my opportunity to live my dreams and do the stuff that I always put in the back burner because all I've been doing all my life is interpretation.
You know what? I said to myself, okay, you know what? I'm gonna give my name to Canada Post and I'll just be a mailman and I'll just walk all day, be outside, because we were inside, and I thought I can just be outside and just be a mailman.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
that would have been great. Yeah.
I I'm I actually considered it, honestly.
You're social distancing. You're getting your
Yeah,
steps in.
exactly. I
Yeah,
didn't want to gain too much weight.
exactly. Like some of us did. Twiddling our thumbs.
Yeah. So then, like, did you start? In my case, actually, my first real remote contract was in August of 2020. That's when I first heard of Zoom. What about you?
I think it may have been, yeah, right before the summertime of 2020. It was my first Zoom call. And by then, I'd already enrolled into Glendon College's Masters of Conference Interpretation because I figured, well, if everything's shut down for, let's say, a year, then I can just be busy and do my master's. So I enrolled in everything, and the first semester went great. But then by the second semester, I was getting requests left, right, and center for Zoom calls, and so I just didn't have time to juggle both. So I was like, well, I'm gonna have to choose one, and I chose to continue with the business and interpretation, and
Of course.
it's
Well,
been and and the demand like exploded. It wasn't like before where like it was like a 3 day conference because you're paying for so many people to travel to your conference. Like you've got the venue, you've got the hotels, you've got the AV company, you've got the interpreters, you've got catering, like all these different aspects of an event, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, let's condense everything into a computer. So
so it got. Did it hurt the interpreters or more the AV companies?
I think it hurt the AV companies quite a bit. There were a few that adapted and did studios. So they put studios in with social distancing. So each interpreter had their own booth.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but they
Three
couldn't.
booths for three interpreters. Oh, that was great. I
I
could
know, eh?
sleep in the booth.
Yeah, exactly.
Brought a sleeping bag.
Yeah, so you bring a sleeping bag, you'll be here a while. But and you have no one to talk to, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, I went once to one of those studios and it was in a garage.
oh
And
yeah.
yeah. They installed some booths in a garage in Trois-Rivières near Quebec, and I called it the Breaking Bad of interpretation. It was like it was full of wires, full of boxes and everything, and then you had the booth, and then we had a monitor. It was a remote event in Quebec City, right next to where I live.
So did anyone ever like come out and like to take the garbage out or like open the garage door by mistake or anything?
They were. Some people had boxes with some blue pills. I don't know what they were.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so the working conditions for interpreter then remained the same, or did you start? How did that go on?
I thought like to be honest, I thought like I really enjoyed traveling for conferences. And I did that from 2003, 2004, right up till the pandemic hit in 2019. And I was on the road like 6 months of the year, and I loved the camaraderie, like
Yeah.
and being able to share lexicons with with your colleagues and stories and like compare notes and stuff and pass each other notes physically when say if one person was interpreting, then the other person, if they had a trouble with one word or something that they didn't know, you could just pass the note and say, "This is the word that you need to use right now." And with Zoom, like it was very difficult to be able to have that working relationship with your colleague. I think that's probably the thing that hurt the most. I don't think
To this
one Zoom.
day?
I think so. I think that yeah, that lack of being able to have that interpersonal relationship with your colleagues was a big negative. It had a really negative impact on our industry. I don't think that it hurt our pocketbooks in the end because in the end the demand grew exponentially for Zoom calls because it was so inexpensive to have so many people meet like I said in front of a computer screen instead of the expense of flying or having people drive into a venue.
Had you ever heard of in like remote interpretation before COVID and everything else, or it was just minor?
I don't think it was called. remote interpretation before then, because I've done like MacGyver kind of accommodations where like you got one cell phone, you got a telephone, you got a 1-800 number that people call in and you do interpretation that way. I don't think there was anything that was all that great online yet. I think Zoom really.
Yeah, well, actually, to be honest with you, just before you did the Masters of Conference Interpretation at Glendon, I did as well. And actually, and way before that, many years ago, um, I had a, I mean, I had a. I'm not going to get into the long story, but I had an accident basically, and I couldn't walk,
Mhm.
right? And I couldn't go to events or anything like that. So then I started to look for online offers. I was like, well, maybe remote interpretation, it's something that, and we're way back in 2016 or something like that.
Mhm.
And I had a company. I'm not going to name any names here, but they were offering me 35 cents USD per minute
Wow.
to be on some kind of service audio call, and they wanted me to, let's say, wait all day, like for instance from 9 to 5 or something like that, and I'm available all day, and then if a call picks up, then I get paid 35 cents US a minute. And it would have been for calls, for instance, for police officers arresting someone, and like for checking their driver's license or whatever. Like it was supposed to be some sort of communication tool for, let's say, somebody's meeting a doctor, and like they would put something like an iPad maybe or something like that, and then you would be doing either consecutive interpretation or something like that. But it was far from from what we do in simultaneous interpretation. But the fear was, at least from my case in 2020, was that suddenly our rates as conference interpreters would be going down, and the market would get so large that the fear was that suddenly we would have to definitely cut what we deserve in that sense. So, did you even have any pressure from clients regarding that, or the 35 cents is just some company that we shouldn't even mention?
Was your company that you worked for, was it an American or
Oh,
Canadian?
no, no, no. I never worked for them. I just
Oh, okay.
I sent it, but sorry, but I sent in an email, and they
Yeah.
replied, and I pulled out the email that I'm actually got right now because I really wanted to remember. And they
Yeah.
said audio projects that would pay 35 cents per minute for audio only service calls, and also a video project that would pay 40 cents per minute
Oh,
for video
it's
service.
like a 5 cent bonus, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Just to have
Awesome.
my face on the camera.
Yeah. Jeez.
But funny thing, when I had my accident back in the day, I was in Japan, and I did before my surgery, had before a knee surgery, I they did provide me an interpreter on an iPad to do consecutive interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak Japanese, so I could go about fine. I mean, but they just brought the iPad, and then I felt really sorry for the interpreter, but she couldn't really follow. Like my Japanese was better than her English,
Oh
so
no.
it was
Yeah.
she didn't have a good experience with all that. And I just thought it was funny. And I had an iPad, and had to talk to an iPad. So I'm guessing it was a bit of the same kind of experience with that 40 cents a minute for a video service call.
I actually have a confession to make.
Oh, go ahead,
I,
go
I,
ahead.
I
Yeah,
actually
nobody's listening to the first episode anyway.
that's true, that's true. So I actually worked for a company that did provide that kind of interpretation.
Really?
I did in 2002, 2003 when I was just getting started.
What? 2002, 2003?
Yep.
That's like an eternity.
I know. And the reason I was asking is because it was an American company and they were paying 50 cents a minute. So I'm like,
And that was 20 years ago.
yes, yes. So I was like, okay, so if you round it up and if you actually were on the phone, because they track the time that you're on the phone, I could make up to $30 US an hour if I'm on the phone that whole time. But that never happened. It was like a 2 minute call, then like a 10 minute wait, then like a 5 minute call, then like a
Yeah.
6 minute wait. So it was like I was getting like probably less than minimum wage. So and I logged on from like 7:30 in the morning till like 11
So
at
you
night.
did try it.
Yes, I did do it for several months. Yeah, because
Wow.
I didn't like I was just out of university, and when I left university, I had a degree in French and Spanish, and
You
the
mean like
week at
literature or?
yeah, just like modern languages, like a
All right.
modern languages diploma from Western. And then after a week that I received the diploma, I got a job as a translator in-house for a company that produced software tools
Hmm.
for the automotive company and the automotive industry. So that company, it was so boring. Like, and I hope we'll do another podcast to explain the difference between translation and interpretation.
Oh,
Because
totally, totally. If there's
yeah,
more than 3 viewers for this video, we will.
awesome. There. So, yeah. So basically, when I left that company in London, Ontario, I moved to Mississauga, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get a job in Mississauga, or whatever. And then I found out it was very difficult for an interpreter to get into the market, or a translator even to get into the market. So I looked at
You mean the interpretation market?
both the translation and interpretation market. Because for translators, if you wanted to work in-house for a company, you had to have at least 2, 3 years experience as a translator.
Right.
And I had like 18 months because I just finished university and then I moved to Mississauga like a year and a bit later, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have enough experience to get a job as a translator in-house. So I decided, okay, well, maybe I'll start juggling with different options like consecutive interpretation. So I went to hospitals and schools and I interpreted for like a parent and a teacher or
So
like
is
a
that how you got into interpretation? You just felt, you know what, I'm going to try this thing, or?
yeah. And then I was doing the telephone stuff at 50 cents a minute and I was doing cultural interpretation, which also didn't pay that great either. So I started, yeah, right from the from the very bottom.
I don't
And
know what. I don't
uh,
know what. When you're saying 50 cents a minute, I only think, when I was a kid, we used to have these ads like 50 cents la minute, adulte seulement.
oh, yeah. Yeah, different industry for sure.
That's why I spoke French. Sexier.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, it's sexier.
Right. So basically, this was the first, before 2020, that was the first experience you had with remote interpretation.
Yeah, 2002. And actually, the only reason I knew about it was because my mom was already she's been an interpreter for years and years and years,
It
and
runs in
she's
the family.
yeah. So she's got her retirement coming up at the end of this month. So she's been doing it for I think for over 40 years. So,
Wow.
but mostly like I said, like she goes to hospitals. Her favorite is medical consecutive interpretation. So she loves helping patients and doctors uh, out. So yeah, that's been her passion. But it was always on and off because my dad always had a job where we have to move to a different country every 3 years. So she had to stop and then go back and then stop and then go back. So it was very difficult for her to maintain like a client base, right? Especially in the
Yeah.
days before like email and Facebook and social media and all that. Like it all had to be over the phone. And not only that, but uh, if you're in a different country, like it's cost prohibitive to be calling people all the time, right? So she basically had to drop everything and then rebuild every 3 years. So yeah, it was difficult for her to get established in Ottawa, which is where we used to go back to after one of my dad's assignments. So, so she did a bit of that telephone interpretation, and then she got me into it, and then I did a bit of that, a bit of translation work, a bit of like just like as a freelancer, and then finally I was like, I did a conference in from January 16th to 19th of 2003. That was my first official simultaneous interpretation conference assignment.
Wow. It's been you said 2003, right?
Yeah, 2003.
So it's, it's been over 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I started when I was 12, and that was 21 years ago. And yeah, it was a pharmaceutical company too that hired us. And I didn't know. I was contacted by an agency, and they said, "Can you do interpretation?" And by
How
then
did
I
they
was
get you? How did they know your name?
don't know. So,
Still to this
but
day?
actually, the reason I don't know is because back in the day too, like if you wanted to get your name around, you had to physically go to the yellow pages and open up and look for translations and language services and interpretation. Like, yeah. And then since at the time I moved from London to Mississauga, I only had the Mississauga yellow pages. So I had to go to Toronto because I knew there were translation agencies there, get their yellow pages so that I could look up each one from A to Z to see if anyone was hiring translators and interpreters. So I, at some point, my name must have gotten around that way. And then so I received this gig from January 16th to 19th, and had no idea what to expect. I was like, okay, yes, I can do interpretation. I've been doing
So
in
that
my
wasn't remote. That was really in the booth.
in the booth for the first time ever, yeah. So like I was like I'm like, yeah, I already do it over the phone. I already do it in person with doctors and patients and teachers and parents and that kind of stuff. Yeah, 4 days for sure. Like, because when you're at a hospital, it's like 2 hours maybe that you get paid for, and I'm like, oh, 4 full days? Like that's great. So even at the rate, I was like, this is like my dream come true. And then so I lived right on the GO train line.
Yeah.
So I took the train down to downtown, and then when I got out at Union Station, I just looked up and I was looking at all these skyscrapers, going, "Oh my God,
I made it.
this is where the money is. Like I made it. Like I'm here."
Bank
So,
Street.
yeah, yeah. Our
But so suddenly, so imagine that. So basically, if somebody really started interpretation in 2020, are basically it means now that there's a whole generation of interpreters that will never get to know that. They only know the online booth.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
So and on the other hand, there must be some, I don't want to do any ageism or something, but, older interpreters that are not as good with technology, who have been working for a number of years in a certain way, and then suddenly they had to learn Zoom.
yep.
So how did you have to deal with that? Because that's
Well,
one of the differences, right, between on-site and online interpretation, right? It's to adapt to the technology.
absolutely, because we were all used to the same equipment inside a booth. Even though they're different brands, they all basically work the same way. So we were used to the equipment that was there. We weren't used to laptops were for checking emails. Like I don't. In
Or
2002, I don't.
terminology, I guess.
Yeah, well, even for terminology, sometimes if it was very specific, there was nothing on the internet.
Didn't we have
So
Termium on a CD? I did.
yes, I had Termium
Yes.
on a CD. That's right. Yes, Termium was the go-to place and the translation bureau or for the federal government was the one who produced it, and it was excellent back then.
For those who don't know, but everyone who listens to this podcast knows what Termium is, I'm sure.
Yes, yes, I'm sure.
Hopefully.
Yes. Yep. Or if not, go to ChatGPT and you'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
So tell me
But
more.
yeah, but back then, also like if it was something very specific, like there was sometimes that I was very nervous. I'm like, this is a cardiovascular surgery conference, and there was no terminology online or anything like that. Then I would sometimes go to Ottawa because they had a French library, or sorry, a French bookstore downtown, and they had all of these different lexicons according to each industry. So I'd get like you'd show up to conferences with physical books, like about like different industries, whichever one was the one that you were doing. So I went there with a big medical book like this with English and French and English terminology.
So do you think that the fact that now it's so easy to find some terminology, it makes us lazier?
Not necessarily. I think it improves what we have to offer because with all the tools that I think all the tools, like all the AI tools that we have at our disposal, it's quicker, so we can look up more things. Like because by the time like you look for a term like a stint, like what's stint in French? I forget. Okay, I'll go look. And then by the time you look, like you're on to the next topic, right? So here you just like type stint, and then all of us, I'm assuming, have our glossaries open, and we can look it up in like a split second, and there it is, and we can interpret. I think it improves the quality of the interpretation. I don't think it makes us lazier.
Yeah, but I mean, but the fact that I don't know. Sometimes I think that it's like kids on their phone, and then you're like, well, read a book, because reading a book is it's better for you than watching a phone, watching scrolling videos all day.
Yeah.
So there is still that, I don't know, that I feel that, just let's say you still remember going to the bookstore and looking for terminology in a dictionary or something. And there's also, I don't know why, but for me, if I see something in a book, I can still see it in my head. It's like as if my mind takes pictures of something. But when I
Hmm.
see all these tabs that I have right now, or that Excel sheet, or that inbox that is right there, it's like as if it's like you're walking in the forest, but you don't see the trees anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that
And
way a lot of times yeah, because when you're looking for terminology in uh, like with a paper dictionary, and then you are physically putting it on the paper, you remember it a lot better than if you're just looking for something and then, okay, next term, okay, next term, next term, and you don't put it anywhere. Or even if you do, you're just copy pasting, you're not physically writing it down. So yeah, I think that back then I used to remember a lot more
maybe you were younger.
things. Well, yeah, age.
But yeah, and what about the equipment? So because when we got into Zoom in 2020, I guess a lot of interpreters did not have either professional equipment, or maybe still today some interpreters don't have professional equipment. So for instance, what do you do? Have you changed your equipment? Is that headset the same that you were using in 2020? I know that this wonderful microphone, which is a Shure 7MB, I think. This is not something I started with, but I really wanted to make sure that I had proper sound quality. So, what about you?
I think you're more techie than I am. So
Uh,
you look up these things way better than I do. But no, these actually I looked at
this is a gaming headset.
yours?
Yours?
No, mine, yes. Oh yeah, mine's a
Yeah, yeah,
gaming
yeah.
headset. Because
I could
and
tell from the color.
that's what I delved into. I was like, because I was looking for office stuff, and I'm like, none of this stuff really looks comfortable. None of this looks
All right,
like
I'm not
easy to use.
sponsored by anyone, but here's another one right here. Okay, this is when I'm traveling and I need to do interpretation, let's say from a hotel room or something,
Yeah.
or this is another. What I'm wearing now is an Audio Technica. This is like really, really light, and but this one from Audio Technica as well. It's right here, right here.
Yeah.
So and yeah, it's super comfortable, and the sound quality is really, really good. I can only say good things about it, but that'll be for another episode where I'll be recommending some techie stuff.
Yeah.
But
But yeah,
yeah,
so I looked at office stuff and I'm like, oh, this stuff looks like very awkward and difficult to use. So I went to I think it was Best Buy or one of those electronic stores, and I'm like, I'm looking for
is
this,
there
but
any other? Best Buy is the only one.
I guess so, eh? Because
Yeah.
Future Shop, well, Future
No,
Shop became Best Buy.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, I asked them, I'm like, I need something like comfortable because I'm gonna be doing like 8 hours of like having a headset on. Like, do you recommend anything? And they're like, go to the gaming section. So so I went to the gaming
Which
section.
is true, and gamers wear are all the time.
Yeah, and they want stuff that's like good, like awesome sound for like the sound effects in their video games. I'm
Yeah,
not a
but
gamer,
how do you
but
like for instance, I tried so many of them, and one thing that I really wanted to avoid was to cancel the. I mean, for instance, I need to hear myself when I'm interpreting.
hmm.
I need to hear the sound of my own voice to actually know what I'm saying. It's kind of sounds strange, but when you're talking and interpreting, it's not the same thing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, what about yours right now? Does it?
I,
Can
I
you
do
really
this.
hear yourself? Oh, isn't
That
that a hassle?
it doesn't really change like the comfort at all, but it's just every once in a
I
while, like
hear a
just a
cracking
tiny little
sound.
bit. Yeah, that's because I moved it. But if I'm interpreting like this, is it still cracking?
Only if you touch it.
Okay, only if I usually have it like that and then I leave it like that. So
Uh,
it's
it would bother me.
that would bug you.
Really?
Yeah. Every once in a while I'm like,
Really?
but they're not 100% noise canceling these ones.
Like for
So
instance, these are open, right? So like they're open on the side.
yeah.
I don't know the exact term for it. Look on Termium.
It's kind of
Uh,
like a mesh, no? Like something like
y-
that.
uh, yeah, it's still metal here, but
Yeah.
it's not completely sealed inside. So basically,
Okay.
I can hear myself almost as if I was not wearing anything.
Yeah. I've tried yours. They're super comfortable and like lightweight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I'm gonna have to invest in a pair of those and stop being a gamer, even though I don't play video games. But yeah,
Well,
they had like they have like comfortable like chairs and stuff because they are in front of computer screens all day doing gaming stuff, and they want
can
like
you?
good sound and
But let's
good
be
like
honest here. I know I love the tech, and I'm a really a geek about these things. But and you have like something for gamers.
yeah.
But let's be honest. Can you really tell if an interpreter is having a better quality equipment than another?
Yeah, if they're not using anything. Like if
What
I
you
were
mean?
to
They're
turn this
using?
off, like
You
if
mean if they're
they're
just using their laptop microphone?
yeah, or like just like AirPods, like
Interpreters using AirPods?
I've seen it.
You kidding me?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Well, actually, like it makes sense if you're like old school because like that was the technology back then.
But one of the things I always tell the client not to do is to have presenters, and they always do, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
always tell them avoid Bluetooth headsets,
Yeah.
and some interpreters do.
Yeah.
Do you tell them? Would you be okay? Let's be just between you and I. Nobody's watching, right? Are you more reluctant to hire an interpreter who doesn't it, that you know doesn't have proper equipment?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it changes.
Yeah.
So basically,
Because it's the one of the most important things when you're doing a conference is to do a sound check before the conference starts. And if the sound is crap, like it's going to reflect poorly on that interpreter, but also the colleague, the agency that hired them. Like the trickle down effect of offering poor service is. I think we were talking about this right before we got on the podcast. Like like
I didn't know we talked before the podcast. What are you talking about? We just appeared just like that.
that's right. We just roll out of bed like this.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, like it takes a long time when there's an issue with a client. Like it takes maybe 2 weeks before the dust is settled. And what I promised myself when I first started my first agency and up till now is that I will not be um, like a fire hall, like putting out fires left, right, and center.
No
I
names.
want quality. Yeah, I want quality. I want quality interpreters. I want them to work quality products. Like, and I trust that they do because and so far I haven't had any issues with people having like the equipment from pre-COVID, let's say. Like I don't think I've had any issues with that with anyone who I've hired. So far so good. But yeah, that would be a red flag if they're even if it's just a casual call. Like I understand if you're going for a walk and you don't bring your stuff with you, but if you're in your office already and like you don't have your stuff on, like it's kind of raises a red flag, you know?
What about wired versus wireless?
I would always go wired with everything.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too. But
yeah.
do you know like maybe not everyone cares about that?
I don't know. I haven't really explored that with interpreters too much, but I know for my own peace of mind, I like having wired internet and wired headphones because as soon as something doesn't goes wrong, like it takes even if it's just a few seconds, like participants losing a few seconds is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like if you and I stop talking right now, I think there would be like this awkward silence and people would start feeling very uncomfortable because nothing's happening. So so just even without interpretation, like just awkward silences are not comfortable.
Or even worse, in mid sentence, you don't hear a key word or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, and for instance, even now we're at conferences, and sometimes like there's glitchy sound, or somebody's coming on a panel, somebody's remote, and then suddenly you can't hear them, and then you're like inaudible to the interpreter,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's terrible. But I think
Well, let's try it.
it's allowed.
Let, let's try it. Why don't we try it? I'll say a sentence, I'll cut it off, and I'll count to 10, and let's see if we can actually make it to 10 without being like, what the hell? All right.
Well, but
So the meaning of life is and that, my friends, is the meaning of life.
the answer is 42.
Yes, that's right. It always is.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Good, a good reference.
So, yeah, it's
Here we go again.
I see exactly. I wanted to try.
See?
Did it work?
Well, I had to intervene, right? Because I was like,
Yeah,
there's an awkward silence.
exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I mean, I'm not even sure it was to this topic, but who cares? Like there is a décalage. There's a gap. Sometimes you have to listen and you have to interpret. And I was told sometimes that some interpreters take so long, and for good reasons, and they do a great job. But some clients sometimes don't trust the interpreter as much if the gap is too long. Have you ever heard that?
I have. Yeah. Yeah. And that it reflects on the quality of the interpretation when it actually doesn't. They're just
Yeah.
processing the information so they can deliver like a perfect sentence or like a the convey the actual meaning because we're not translating, we're interpreting. We want to get the message across from language A to language B. So yeah, it sometimes it takes a little longer, and even with the newest technologies, because now like we've talked about remote, we've talked about it in person. There's also the hybrid option. So unfortunately, still like there's still a little bit of a lag between being in person and listening to a conference on Zoom. So even that little half second is important to people listening to us.
Do you do a better job online, remote? Doesn't matter.
Uh,
In on site or remote, or doesn't
yeah.
matter to you?
To me, it doesn't matter as much, I don't think. I think when
Is
you're
it?
at home, like you can turn it off to a certain point, right? Like
Yeah,
when it's not your turn, you don't have to be listening to it in the background, or like you do just to make sure your colleague is still interpreting and everything, and that there's no issues. You're by your phone and everything. But I think when you're in person and you're still in the room, you're still listening to the meeting that's taking place. So I think there's less of a break when you're in person. So you're still kind of using your brain throughout
yeah.
your
But
break.
if I'm totally transparent here, since no one is listening, I would I would say that
We apologize if there is one
yeah,
listener.
exactly. My son. Okay. Um, the I sometimes think that when I'm on site, it can be also a performance.
Hmm.
I'm like I was doing an interpretation last week for the Swedish ambassador that came in Quebec City at the l'Assemblée nationale, National Assembly here in Quebec
Hmm.
City. And, I was there. I had to wear a suit, tie, and there was the ambassador, there was the aide, there was the Speaker of the House and the Parliament here in Quebec City.
Hmm.
And the fact that I was there sitting and watching them, and then suddenly I felt that my voice and I could get some sort of gravitas
Hmm.
during the interpretation, and I could really I could see their body language. There are some things that I could really see, and it turned me in the moment, right? There's I feel that when you're on site, there's more at stake.
Hmm.
But when you're working remote, I feel that sometimes you can be so detached, and I'm sure that a bunch of interpreters are just doing the laundry or just leaving the computer. Not everybody's like you and me, really checking what is going on. Of course, like some
Hmm.
people might be doing exercise, or some might be people taking care of their kids or eating, or what. It's fine,
Yeah.
but I feel that the fact that when you're on site, there's more at stake. At least in my case, I feel that I'm doing a better performance because, okay, not every conference, let's admit it, the stakes are pretty high, but when they are, I rather be on site. Don't you think?
Yeah. And I think that people who are presenting also want to be on site more than on Zoom. Um, I let's just say like like you and me here, like we can't move our hands. We can't really like, or even if we can, like it's not captured on camera, so there's no real point, right? Like when
Actually, this
you're
is the first episode, so I don't know how large this is. So I don't know if the final shot will only see my thumbs or if we'll see my arms. Actually, this is the first one, so I don't even know what is being captured right now. But sorry, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, what I was saying is that the presenters, like when they're in front of an audience, they're using their arms, they're using like a lot of body language. Whereas I feel like when you're stuck in front of a screen, you have to be kind of sequestered into the four corners of your screen. So you can't do the things that you would be able to do on 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 stage, right? So I feel like the interpreters are the same because we kind of have to mimic to a certain extent what the people are doing. And I find myself in the booth always moving my arms and stuff, like going with the flow with the presenter. Whereas like when I'm at home, I'm like, if I do it, it kind of feels weird because there's nobody around except me in my office. And then like maybe like my wife comes in and gives me like a cup of coffee, and like I just like knock the coffee over. But like she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm interpreting." But it just doesn't have that same feel, right? Like that same
Right.
in presence. I do think that there's a value to being present at a conference. My only word of caution would be like I did that all the time, like for years and years and years.
You mean like traveling all over?
Yeah, yeah. Like I was on the road 6 months of the year, and then the rest of the time I was like working in Toronto and
So
uh,
when you mean being on the road, it's literally you're flying somewhere.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I've done
So, but
crazy. Well,
isn't there enough work in Toronto? Like,
uh, yes and no.
or you just wanted to?
I find that the clients who have a conference like a destination conference, they have to plan it so many months in advance. So you book it on your agenda several months in advance. So you already know you're going to Vancouver this week, and then you're going to Halifax next week, and then you're going here. So that's what I used to do is I used to fill up my calendar, and then I would give everything else to other interpreters. So like if there's somebody who has an office in Toronto, and they're like, oh, we have a meeting next week. Can you find us interpreters? So then odds are the people who are in Toronto will be available, so they would cover Toronto while I'm abroad. So, and yeah, I used to travel all over the United States, all over Canada. I've done every province. Still missing Northwest Territories and Nunavut. So if anybody is listening to this, this is my promotion. Please send me to Northwest Territories and Nunavut because
Yeah, you're from Toronto. You live next to the Toronto Pearson Airport.
yeah,
I mean, it's more or less. But what I'm saying is,
yeah,
starting from
close
Quebec
enough.
City, I mean, if I wanted to go to the Northwest Territories, in my case, I mean, it would be shorter to go to Tokyo.
Yeah, probably.
With all those delays, those flights and everything. I
Yeah,
mean, the flight Toronto Quebec City. I mean, 9 out of 10 is going to be delayed.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
it's much harder for me in Quebec City to travel than you are. So you're kind of lucky on that side. So you can go to Yellowknife and
I'll tell you all
I'll
about
keep
it.
the yeah. And tell me about it. Take some good pictures.
Yeah, no, but I love it because I have a client or a colleague that went to Iqaluit and had an amazing time. Said it was just like a completely different experience from anything he's ever seen in Canada. Like it almost looked like a lunar landing, but with a bunch of like buildings that were like maybe
So
not like some were permanent, but some of them were kind
yeah,
of
but
like
you know what you're saying right now makes me realize that I think that it's important at your job to also be motivated.
hmm
And I think that if you're a new interpreter and you're just starting in 2020 or 2021 and you're used to the online remote interpretation, I think that maybe you won't stay as long as an interpreter because you won't be motivated because you always be remaining at home and then you'll be, if you have everybody has a different family situation.
hmm
But okay, it's true that okay, that's like that dream. Okay, I can live anywhere and I can do interpretation from anywhere. But the reality is, most people are stuck in one place, even if they can work remotely. And I think that what makes interpretation exciting, and that's what I was being sold years ago when I first looked into it, was that the fact that I could travel, I could meet people, I could be anywhere. I don't think I would have chosen to become a remote interpreter if I had started in 2020. And although for a lot of reasons and convenience with family, or we have more contracts because we're in remote interpretation, I think that's fine, and I think that's one of the benefits of remote interpretation. But ultimately, I think that what I realized with COVID and now with retrospect is that meeting people in person is important.
Hmm.
Being on site is important. I know it's more expensive. There's some clients who want to pay, and and we have more meetings. But if you get, I rather, let's say there's an event here in Quebec City. I don't want to stay in my house. I want to go. I just want to walk and go and get some fresh air. Okay, maybe I won't do 2 contracts a day. Oh, I've never done that, right? Nobody ever has. Don't talk to anyone from Laik. Uh, Nobody from Laik is listening to
We'll,
this podcast.
we'll have a podcast about that eventually.
But what I'm saying is, although you may only do one interpretation for the whole day, um, I think it makes you happier. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's me, maybe because I'm a social creature, but I mean, if I had a closing thought on today's podcast, would be that I would vote for on-site interpretation rather than remote, although it's good to do remote for all the conveniences. But ultimately, I think that meeting people in person and getting to know them, seeing the client, seeing who organizes, talking to the AV, and if there's a problem, you can just see someone right away. I think that, I mean, if most interpreters that have been doing this since before COVID, I would bet that most would want to be on site rather than remote. What do you think? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think my vote is in the same lines as you. I would vote for in person for interpretation rather than remote. But with the caveat that you should always be aware of how far you can stretch your limits. Like, make sure you have a good work-life balance. Don't sacrifice going on trips for like an entire year to different conferences and then like forget that you have a life at home as well. So there's that balance that I think that you have to strike. So yeah, like professionally speaking, on site is definitely the way to go. But just for your own work-life balance and your mental health, I would say try to strike a good balance.
Cool. Well, on these very wise thoughts, we're going to conclude our very first podcast. All right, Brian. Glad meeting you today, and we'll see each other on the next one.
Sounds good.
All right. Cheers.
Salud.
Salut.